I want to welcome you back to another episode of what I branded Pivotal, since these interview style segments tackle impactful CPG industry topics and lessons from the business leaders that live it every day. Many years ago, when I started proclaiming that the best and brightest sports nutrition brands could compete against any large CPG incumbent when it comes to functional food and beverage, old head industry folk, especially beverage people, thought I was crazy. But at this point, I can just let that one super important beverage category retail sales scan data do most of the talking for me. Energy drink brands that have roots in the supplement industry now account for over $3 billion in retail sales. And while most know the growth stories of Celsius, C4 Energy, Ghost, and Alani Nu by now, I'm going to dig one layer kind of deeper to those brands and highlight a fast charging challenger that could soon crack the top 10 best selling energy drink list. In my wide reaching conversation with Nic Stella, we cover topics like his ability to spot early internet content and commerce connections, which have become the foundational element to the growth behind Rise and Rise Fuel. We also talked through a few different strategic partnership strategies, from flavor licensing to sponsoring UFC champions and professional sports teams. Moreover, Nick gets real about the beverage business and outlines a growing trend that I've long dubbed the Great Beverage Mirage. Finally, we talked through his decision to lean into TikTok, which made him a key character in the brand story and catapulted Rise to the top categorical spot on TikTok Shop. But before we jump into those insightful topics and many more, I wanted to give a quick shout out to the supporter of this content, Cognizant. I know I sound like a broken record at this point, plus, y'all see the branded beverage cooler over my shoulder in YouTube videos. But whether it's in convenient energy drinks or maybe one of Rise's great tasting supplements, the brain energy ingredient Cognizant is a part of my everyday routine to stay at peak performance levels. To learn more, I'll leave the link to the Cognizant website in this content's description. But without further delay, here is the recent conversation I had with my good buddy, Nic Stella. All right, so I think I've previously mentioned in content before, but I've kind of always felt that many of the sports nutrition industry kind of like has discounted the early stage of the Rise growth story because of their myopic understanding of business strategy. Maybe this just is kind of what we were just talking off camera about, Nick. But honestly, I think they miss the nuance. I've always felt that it's something that has started with the founder and CEO's relentless approach to business. But Nick, thank you again for taking the time out of your schedule to join me. I'm excited that we actually get to hit record on one of our conversations. I think it's going to be really good for people to see.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
So let's just start at the beginning, I guess, before Rise, and get you a little bit of a sense of like what got you into the supplement industry. I mean, I know there was a brief time you had at Shreds. I think there was, something in between and then Rise, but like just kind of walk me through what got you into this space.
So I think it dates before that. I was an NCAA wrestler, so always was into dietary supplements and nutrition. A lot of people know I was a wrestler, but they don't know like the story about taking supplements in the off season. So wrestlers would lose weight during the season, right? And then in the off season, you try to get as big as possible, as quick as possible. So we would experiment with supplements, proteins, pre-workouts. I know Explode at the time. I was taking like your cheap Walmart protein, which was great at the time. So I'd always take it, but I also got my degree in digital marketing and media. So I loved like branding and making money online. So got out of college. I would still go to the gym all the time because it was just in my DNA. I'd always lift. I was coaching at Southlake. I don't know if you know what Southlake is, but it's like a ritzier part of Dallas, DFW. So as I was coaching and still lifting and still going to the gym with my family, because my wife was a wrestler too, so she was very active after school, after college, I'd be coaching in this entrepreneurial land. So in Southlake, every single dad was an entrepreneur. That's like far and few between that actually worked for somebody. So I started getting into building websites for these guys because that's what I got my degree in. So as I'm building websites, I'm still going to the gym, still have a passion for it. I'm seeing a lot of holes in the market. but it was just an easy thing for me to transition into after I realized I can make a lot of money on my own. So my first venture, well, you had mentioned shreds. So that was the thing I did. I think it was like 3 in the morning one night. I was doing just hitting people up, and I'm like, hey, Shreds is a cool brand. Like, I like what they're doing. And I hit them up. I'm like, hey, your remarketing sucks and your branding sucks. So the CTO called me that night and he's like, hey, let's talk about retargeting. And we had like an hour conversation. One thing led to another. I started freelancing for him and then did a great job there. And they offered me a job in New Jersey. So packed my life up, moved to New Jersey. I had 1 kid, 2 dogs, wife. Basically, I told her she's from Texas. I was like, if you don't like it, no questions asked, we'll move. 4 months in, she's like, I hate it. I'm like, all right, let's get the fuck out of here. We're moving. So packed up, moved back to Dallas. At the same time, my friend, you might know him, you might not, Ryan Needle. It doesn't ring a bell. So he has rehab centers down in Florida. He was also a wrestler. He started this brand called Fit Life. So it's these little dumbbells. And when I saw him, I'm like, Ryan, that's the stupidest thing I've ever seen in my life. I'm just going to tell you. He kept pounding me. He's like, come on, man, invest with me. I know you can build a website. I know you can help with marketing. I know you're just at Shreds, so you know all these influencers. And I'm like, you know what? If it gets you off my back and you leave me alone, I'll invest. So I invested in this company, a couple grand. And do you remember the days of shout for shout? Basically, all right, so he was like, oh, I paid $20 and I put it on this page and we got 20 sales. I'm like, okay, well, let's spend $1,000 and put it on this bigger page and see what happens. So we put it on this big page. We sold out that day. I was like, oh man, we got something. So started going through the whole shout for shout thing. We built up our page. We ended up doing like $4 million of these stupid necklaces and bracelets in like a year. And then I ended up selling it. And then eventually my passion just came back to supplements and trying to change the industry. And that's how I got into RYSE.
I thought I heard a story once, and this is a little bit of a, I guess now through the years, a commonality, but like Fit Life is obviously a portfolio of brands, a supplement brands.
Fit Life brand, yeah.
You're playing around the idea of maybe, doing supplements or something like that. And, Fit Life brands now, I think people watch my content, they own Muscle Farm, which was kind of how I got into the industry. But knowing that you couldn't really, I guess, extend that brand into supplements was then the idea, okay, I need to go off and kind of start my own thing. I want to create RYSE. And where did RYSE, I guess, like even the name and everything, like where did that come from?
So it's kind of the same, like Fit Life, we did start supplements under Fit Life and we were blocked. Something I've always wanted to do. Like the whole genesis behind Fit Life was I came in and I put a branding story behind it. So on your wrist, on your mind, like having this little dumbbell on your wrist reminds you to stay fit when you go to grab something, or when you're lifting in the gym, you see it and it's a reminder. So RYSE is kind of an extension off that. Like we put a Y in it because everybody has a Y. And it's like, what are you chasing? Are you trying to be a good dad? Are you trying to be good in business? Are you trying to be a bodybuilder? Are you trying to be an NCAA wrestler? No matter what you're trying to do, like everybody has a why and a purpose. And that's where Fuel Your Greatness came from. Like our products are here to help fuel whatever you're trying to do. So that was like the whole genesis and kind of how it evolved from Fit Life into RYSE.
So now you're, it's almost almost
coming
7
up on
years?
6 years, 7 years. Coming up on 7 years, yeah.
What's some of the, I guess, overall, like, has the brand superseded some of those earlier kind of visions, or are you still growing into like those huge aspirations that you had?
So it's funny I say this, like everyone wants to sell a company, right? Like that's your goal. You don't start, I guess some people start a company for a passion project, but ultimately I want to sell the brand. And when I started this brand, I wanted to sell the brand for less revenue than I do a year now. So we've extremely superseded what we wanted to do. We're constantly growing triple digits every single year. So we're out there, we're making a splash, and it's like, I tell people all the time, like when I'm hiring like a CFO or I'm hiring, and they're like, what's your vision? And I'm like, well, I'm 34 years old. I still work out myself. I love the products. I take them every day. I'm having fun. Like, I don't know. I don't have a plan. I'm not selling anytime soon. I get hit up all the time to sell. People want to buy it all the time. Um, but until the time's right, like right now, I'm just having fun.
Yeah, I think that's an important part because I know I have this conversation a lot with
I
founders,
think you texted
and
me that not too long ago.
yeah, there's this, there's a situation where it's like they go, "Yeah, I want to sell this business," and then I always just kind of say like, "Okay, what would you do the next day?" Like, because if you still are like super passionate and you're still really driven towards growing this thing, you're probably not there yet. Like, there's probably still some scaling left, some growth left, some even just, I guess, pain that you need to go through, that you still want to go through or whatever before you decide to do that. Because if not, you're going to wake up the next day and you're going to, you're going to probably try to do something else. And maybe you won't be able to do the exact same thing. So then you'll have this kind of period where you're trying to figure out, what am I doing or whatever. So, I think people don't think about the next day, and obviously there are those, I guess, those phases where the acquirer will hire you for a time and maybe you stay on or whatever. There are those agreements, but I do think there is usually that next day after you sign that paperwork that you have a little bit of like, I don't want to say regret, but you're like, dang, now what am I doing?
I think if your goal is to sell a business too, you make mistakes for the next person that's going to buy it. Like, it's not easy to sell a business too. Like, people think like, oh, I'm just going to build this business and sell it. Yeah, good luck. Like, Pepsi's not just buying every business out there. Like, you might be able to get a PE firm to buy like a minority stake in it, like 20%, but that's still even hard. Like, and people like have this vision that they want to sell so bad. They're making mistakes trying to drive revenue. They're hitting like these chargebacks everywhere. They're not making their bottom line looks like crap to try to make their top line look better. They don't understand like you don't trade on multiples until you hit over $100 million. Like, there's so many things people are doing to try to sell that I feel like are such huge mistakes too. Um, so like we're trying to just keep doing everything correctly. Like, if we have an issue with the product, we try to fix it. Um, there's a lot of retailers we haven't jumped into because we're not ready to do yet. We are at the end of the year, like Target and Kroger for supplements. But, until we're ready to do that, we try to take it very slow because we don't want to make a mistake where we mess up the brand to try to sell the brand.
Yeah, I think that's a good point because I think the best way to build is to not assume that you're going to get acquired. Like, you're building basically that business, that perfect business, or whatever your kind of ideal situation is. And eventually somebody's going to see that and come, and it's going to be that perfect situation over, putting all of your chips, all your assets, deploying them in a certain way. I can always, people are like, how do you know when XYZ business is probably going to get acquired or whatever? And I said, it's very much intentional about how they position a lot of their things, a lot of their communications, a lot of like what they're doing. Like, everything starts to look a certain way. And you go, they have a timeline here that they have to make this happen, because if they don't,
Yeah.
they put all of their pieces, in war game type of strategy, like they put it in the wrong way, and then all of a sudden they're going to get outflanked, or they're going to be some situation is going to happen where it's actually going to be a detriment to what they did. They're going to have to back out of all that and do something else, and it's going to take them, a few years to kind of do that. So it's really, a lot of times people are intentionally doing some of those things, and if they can time it right, great. If they can't, they're in trouble, which happens more times than not, I think, in the supplement industry, because I think there's a, you mentioned like a little bit of overzealousy to the sense of people believing that there's a huge attractiveness to a lot of these like caps, powders, pills businesses. I think that there's a finite amount of buyers. I think they're growing more now, but we think about a couple of years ago, there was very few, I guess, people that wanted these types of businesses, or wanted them at a, I guess, a multiple or something that made sense to the founder.
And a lot of people are growing it around people. So we're really intentional on not building the brand around Noel, who's one of our big influencers. Like, if you look, 90% of our revenue is driven through not his products, right? So like, you got to build a brand that can stand on their own. Like, one thing I hear, I talk to every PE firm in the world, right? One thing I hear is like, it needs to stand on its own. Like, if you were to take everybody out of the business, it needs to still operate. And there's not many brands out there that are doing that. I mean, RYSE is one of them. C4 was one of them, already acquired. Celsius, already acquired. But there's not many that aren't like trying to build it around a person. And I think that's the wrong strategy that a lot of people are going with. And I think, again, they're trying to drive revenue up to then just sell it, but they're going to have a harder time selling it when they get to the top.
Yeah, there's an element of like key man risk or key person risk where essentially you end up needing to transcend that person, if not, because eventually that person's going to be, they're going to leave the business, they're going to be moving on or whatever, and then for whoever's acquiring it, they got to discount all of that, so it ends up creating more of an issue for them. You mentioned earlier around just kind of, I guess, a methodical or like an intentional like retail rollout. I know you guys specifically at the beginning, and this is probably right around your core competencies and your strengths, is like, e-com and really focused e-com. And then over time, especially the last couple of years, you've incrementally rolled out partners that I think have grown the exposure, the awareness. Also, to your point, I think they have kept the tightness to the brand, because you haven't went so wide so quick that you end up losing elements of like what makes you special.
Yeah, and we don't want to screw partners over that kind of give us a chance. So like Vitamin Shop was our first big retailer, right? We love them. They're our focus. So I believe we built a brand online, like you said. And if you build a strong base, you can then drive those customers into stores. So for the first 3 years, we just built, went into Vitamin Shop, #1 brand instantly because of the base we built immediately. We didn't go into GNC for like 3 years because of that. We do special things for Vitamin Shop. They're our big partner, but you don't want to overextend yourself. Like you said, like I see a lot of brands right now, because I get all the spins data, you do too. They spread themselves way too thin and they're like plummeting everywhere, declining. And they're number like 10, 12, 13. And you're like, well, you screwed yourself. You didn't lean in and grow it the right way. And then if you look at us, like we went into GNC, we're climbing. Like that's what you want to do. You want to partner up with these people or these retailers, and you really want to help grow their brand and drive foot traffic in there, or you're not going to be successful. Like trading sales isn't going to do it.
Yeah, I still think there's a little bit of the and maybe this is again part of the ethos of the industry. There's a lot of ego. I think there's a lot of vanity metrics. People love door count. They love just selling in, but not necessarily thinking about what's most important, which is taking.
What happens if you can't turn?
Yeah, you got to turn it. You got to get crate velocities. I mean, like honestly, I'd rather have density and velocity over thinking about how wide can we go, how many doors can I get. There's just a lack of understanding that is what really builds momentum. And when you could take that story and sell that to anybody, which is, I think, maybe more important when you move into energy drinks too. I mean, like that's the whole name of the game, is when you come down to that. It's not necessarily about like just putting it in everywhere. It's like you got to be able to create that story. You have to be able to create those sales, because that can then take that story, you move it, and you just basically keep selling it across the board nationally.
Well, that goes back to like people are trying to sell too quick.
Yeah.
They're trying to get everywhere too quick. They're not winning anywhere. And then people come in and they start looking, and the #1 thing they look at, what is your VPOs in all these doors? And when you're not doing good, they're like, nah. Versus really focusing on key partners every year and really growing them. So like we could have went into, Target right away too. Instead, we focused on Walmart. We changed our strategy. You're going to see this year coming up, we're changing our strategy to what's winning. We've tested it. You might be able to tell based off our testing. And we're really going to win next year. And then now we're going into Target at the end of the year, and we're really going to win in there. So I think it just takes like focusing on channels and FDM, focusing on specialty, focusing on all these different spots and really winning there before you expand too much.
I briefly mentioned energy drinks, so let's kind of talk about that. I know for both of us, it's probably a passion. Like we both are energy drinkers. You know what I mean? Yeah. We love energy drinks, but was there something beyond that? I know this is now 2 years, which is kind of it's funny because I was talking to somebody couple of months ago, and they were mentioning RYSE, and they were talking about it in a way that it was on shelf for years. And I said, it's only 2 years. And at that point it was a year and a half. I said, something like a year and a half. And they were like, I think it took them aback, like a little. They were like, wow, what? Like, I think they thought it had been going for years and years and years before that.
Yeah, no. I mean, naturally, like, so this might kind of sound different than what I just talked about, but you hit a scale and you hit a certain top in powders, right? Like, you can only scale so much in the powder business. So naturally, I'm like, all right, we have these great license, we have a great following, we can create great products. Naturally, the energy drink category was next up. Now, what I didn't know is how much bullshit is in the space, from slotting fees to chargebacks to FSRs to RSMs to building out the strategy of it, which I think, there's probably a handful of new energy drinks from supplement brands that come up every day that aren't going to be able to do it because of that. And, because you look at Nutrabolt, they were able to do it because they had such a good powder business. That's how we're doing it. It's all funded by our powder business. And a lot of these companies are like, oh, let's try an energy drink because I think it might work and it might be the next thing. But there's so much that goes into it. And like, it's very fun, but it's rewarding, but it's very hard. And the VPOs and like, you got to build out a DSD strategy. So we have 205 different distributors. And I mean, there are people like Ghost that just goes right in Anheuser-Busch, but those are very few and far between. There's Ghost, and then there's Miller Coors with Zoa. So it's just really hard. It's really hard to grow. I think people undercut and undervalue like how hard it is for these brands that have actually made it. My hat's off to them because it's pretty impressive going through it myself.
Yeah, I've always referred to that as the great beverage mirage. I think in our space since like 2017, 2018, I've called out so many brands because I've seen them being overconfident, believing that all of a sudden, because they're great in this little kind of world, and they are that big fish in a small pond, that they're all of a sudden jumping into this much more complex, much bigger, it's just like all the things you said, plus so many more things, even from like the manufacturing.
We haven't even talked about supply chain and shipping but just to sell the product. It's not. You're not just selling a vitamin shop in GNC. Like you're selling to you. I mean, you could go direct through like Core-Mark and McLean, but then you got to have key account managers to sell it in every store, and then there's no merchandising, and then you get into Walmart. There's no incremental placement. Like it's a huge strategy, and it's not what people think. And if you're not turning in these stores, you're cut immediately, and then you're cut from the DSD. And then if you have gaps in those DSDs, you're never getting chain wide. So like that's something you really need to be ready before you do it, which 95% of drink brands that do it from supplement brands aren't ready. And I watch them and I'm like, you guys, good luck.
Yeah, I'm the same. But I'm the same way. I try to tell them not to do it. I try to make sure that they understand the worst case scenarios. And if they still think, hey, I'm going to be able to do it, hats off to them, try it out, whatever. But I think it's a matter of like, they only see they see the outliers. They see, you guys or Ghost or C4 or Alani or whatever. And they go, well, if they could do it, I could do it, which is true in the sense that if one person has been able to do it, yes, you could do it. But ultimately there is 99%, like you said, of people that have died.
Cost money too.
Whatever.
How much money do you guys have to put into this?
And they miss to your point, I think because I've spent a lot of time in beverage, I understand there's multiple build models. I think they miss that most of the build models is in energy or just beverage in general, is you raise a ton of capital up front because you tend to not be profitable until 20, 30, 40, $50 million in sales. That's when you start.
I can tell you I'm doing more than that and I'm still not profitable on the beverage side.
And it's one of those situations where people go like, they miss that. They think, oh, well, I'm going to be able to do this, but they don't realize like you are doing what I think, if it's bucked up or if it's, even a little bit of like, C4, where like you're funding it through the brand
Powders.
equity of your business. Like you've been able to build an audience, a community that is really supportive of the brand, and it's a natural extension to the powders. So then they go,
Yep.
well, I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to give it a try. And that happens. And it ends up,
Believe it or not, that's not true though. Like with how much, and I love Ryan Gardner, this is nothing at him, but how much pre-workout they sell, I would think they would sell more energy drinks. Same with us. With how much pre-workout we sell, I would think we would sell more energy drinks in Vitamin Shop and GNC, but we don't. So we actually sell more outside, like Walmart. Like I think that's attributed to our license. People see Kool-Aid and they go and grab it and pick it up that don't know about us. But I just thought we'd have a bigger audience right away, and we don't. So for me, it's like, and you're selling a $3 can. Like how many times do people go into Vitamin Shop? Once a month? So you're selling to this person once a month versus you want to sell that person every single day to get that AOV that you need. You know what I mean? So like, it's just so much harder.
Yeah, it just takes, I mean, it takes a lot of time. I think that there's a patience element in beverage, especially we're talking energy beverages, where the shopping behavior going into a convenience store where, 70-ish% of the revenue comes from, like, you got people that have like a baked in kind of habit that is very quick. They beeline to a cooler. They know colors or logos or something that they're looking for. They quickly grab something within a few seconds. They walk out the door because that's just where they're at. So sometimes it takes, to your point, a little bit of time for them to continuously see that. And then they, maybe after the fifth or sixth time, they see, like, if it's Kool-Aid or if it's Sunny D or whatever, they go, you know what, I'm going to give this one a shot. I'm going to give it a shot. They try it. And then all of a sudden it's in their rotation, and then eventually becomes all of their rotation. And then eventually you start to get that going, but it takes time. It's one of those things where, though, the category I think is very promotional driven still. It's also habit driven, where people just are very quick in and out. They don't do a lot of research while they're in the cooler. It's like, I'm rushing in, going in the convenience store, and I'm heading out to work. I'm heading out wherever I'm going. I'm not really spending a ton of time like trying to discover brands like at a grocery store or at a Costco or something like that.
That's a good point. And the slotting fees in these like C stores are $500,000, $1 million a year. Like if you're not turning in those a significant amount, you lose so much money. People don't understand that you have to pay to play. So like, first you got to get into the store. First, sure, we'll take you. Then they're like, put your money where your mouth is. If you want 5 shelves, you're paying $500,000. You're like, whoa. Like, okay, let's do this. So like, it's not just getting in, it's having the funds to actually prove that you can sell. It's a crazy world.
Yeah, no, it's definitely one of those things where it sounds really fun and attractive and interesting, especially for you and I or anybody that likes energy drinks. You're like, this sounds like a great idea. But a lot of times the miss is what you mentioned is like, they see the pie as, oh, well, it's easy to get into GNC or it's easy to get into Vitra. And I say easy relative to other places.
Easier,
and
yeah.
They go, well, I'm going to do that. And if your business is, say you're a 5 million odd selling powders and you go, oh, I can get another couple $1 million in energy drinks. Like, it seems attractive, but it's such a misunderstanding of like winning and maybe what is like, why you should do what you do. Cause you're basically adding so much complexity to your business. You're adding, a ton less margin, a ton of like all these things that for this tiny pie that you don't really ever, have the setup to actually jump to the next pond, the bigger pond, which is convenience, needing DSD, like you just don't ever have that place. So you're really just like handcuffing yourself for the reason of like, because it looks cool or whatever. I don't know.
It is cool. I will say, like, whenever I see someone out in the wild with a RYSE can, I'm like, that's cool. And the more you see it, so like as we grew the brand, I see it more and more and more and more at wrestling tournaments, at the gym, at a concert, so it's like, it is really cool. And it is really gratifying, more so than powders, because everyday people can drink them and consume them and take them. Like even my mom will call me and she's like, a nurse at work had one of your drinks and had no idea. I'm like, that's really cool. So like that, I think that's the cool factor is it's such a big market that you can do so many things. So like I sponsor the Buffalo Sabres, the Blackhawks, the Bulls. I almost just leaked a new one that I'm about to sponsor on accident. You you sponsor all these things, and it's just so much cooler, right? Like you can't really, like I wouldn't want to be the official protein powder of the Buffalo Sabres.
No, it's not
Not as cool,
yeah, not as
right?
cool. Yeah.
So it's like you're the official energy drink, and you can find us in Walmart, Target, Tops, Wegmans. It's just cooler. It's a cool space. It is fun. The velocities you get too, like you're selling millions of cans a month. It's cool to see, right? You're not selling millions of bottles per month. So I think that's the difference. And I think when you hold it, you feel cooler and you can do better things with it. And relatively speaking, it's, I don't want to say better for you, but it's better for you than like a 400 milligram pre-workout. So it's fun. I'm having fun with it.
Let's talk, since you just mentioned partnerships, let's just kind of talk kind of widely. And this is mostly, I'm asking these questions because I think, again, this is an area that you have had a lot of experience in, good, bad, ugly, all these different things. And for entrepreneurs, which are most of the people that watch my content, I mean, I think there are some things that you've learned over time, or something that you've taken, or just, some lick your wounds type stories that you could kind of mention. And I'm thinking
Talking
about
athletes, or are we talking?
Well, I mean, I think we could start at athletes, because I think there's one, definitely linkage that you could probably talk about, where you were, Conor McGregor early, and now Sean O'Malley, which I'm imagining you learned a lot, because from those years, I think it's been 4 or 5 years between them. Like you probably were like, I know how to, connect with Sean and figure out that contract to make it make sense, so I can get what we both can win-win. It all works out. Where like the beginning with Conor, I'd imagine like, hey, he was at the top of his game, I think, at the time, and like starstruck, you're like, bam, let's make it happen.
It's structuring the deal. With Conor, I mean, they were about the same amount, Conor and Sean, right? But how you structure that deal and what you're going to get out of it is what's most important. Flip side to that too, they have to love the brand and buy into the brand. Sean loves it. I don't know if you follow him, but he loves it. He drinks it. He lives the brand. Whereas you're paying someone like $1 million just to hold it like this. Hey, go get RYSE. Like that's not what it's about. Like people see through that, and I think influencer marketing is changing recently. We talk about that internally all the time. Like it's not the same as it was years ago. Our sales trends and everything that we're seeing, influencers are dying. Like that space is over. People want to see brand owners. They want to see behind the scenes. They want to see how it's built. Yes, these influencers get attention to it, but I think it's positioning like your own content on your own pages. So like using Sean O'Malley in great content and saying the right things that you can then put on your page that you can then advertise with is way more important than them posting it. Posts don't really do anything or correlate into sales anymore. It's like when you watch a commercial, right? You have, I like Josh Allen. I loved his commercials that he's been doing. So even though the bills suck, but you have Josh Allen on there. They see it. They stop to watch it, right? Josh Allen didn't post it on his page, but he's using that commercial to make you stop and actually take in the content that they're trying to give you. And I think that's the biggest thing I learned through the last 4 years of marketing is like how to position these people in ads and use them in certain places. So like a pop-up display, we will use like a big Kool-Aid guy popping out to draw people into our pallet drop and then be like, oh, they have Sunny D, they have Sour Punch, they have Kool-Aid. So like really draw people in to come to your product and see it and then try to consume it.
Yeah, I think it's important to understand, I guess, from because a lot of times these are demand drivers. These are people that drive traffic or drive some attention in some area. And I think, to your point, I think things have changed. I also think that there's, anybody that you have a part of your organization, like they should start to create depth. Like they are a character in your story. I mean, really, ultimately, if you're building a brand and you're not just building products, you are stacking stories on top of that. And that's really what the brand is, because it's just a bunch of stories that create a huge arc. So like when you have these people in your organization and you know, have some type of affiliate type arrangement, they get some revenue, you know, wherever, and it just goes to that. And there's nothing left past that point. I think people see through that now. They go like, you know, this is a talking head. This is nothing different than, you know,
Where they're
somebody
like,
that,
go buy RYSE. Like, come on.
yeah, like they want to see, you know, to the point, like they want to see them go to your headquarters or, you know, go to meetups and talk to, like there has to be some dynamic elements to this where it builds depth to the story, because if not,
They want to see them ask questions and be truly invested into the brand.
Yeah,
Like,
it has to
this
be,
is why I signed with this brand.
yeah, it has
Because
to be,
they know they're being paid.
yeah,
Everyone knows I'm paying Sean O'Malley. He ain't posting it for free.
yeah,
But why did he pick us over Celsius and Monster and all these other brands he could have gotten paid the same amount for? Is, I think, what you need to tell people.
yeah, and I think that's the important part of it. Is like I think it needs to get into the depth of the whys. It has to, like those whys have to intertwine. The stories have to intertwine. Like it can't just be, you know, this random thing within somebody's life that like you don't really understand, other than you go, yeah, they're making money. Like there has to be something past that. And I love, and this isn't available to every situation, but I do think like for unique situations like Noel, like where there's ownership, there's like he's a part of the business. He's, you know, like he's interwoven really deeply
In an
into
office
that.
2 doors down right now.
Yeah, and there's like, talk about authentic right there, because like it's one of those things where they see that there is, you guys are lockstep together, where there's like a connectivity to that, where like it's not necessarily that he's, you know, just talking about buy this. Like you guys are in a way like creating like a multiplier effect with your stories, because he's approaching it in different ways. He has his own, you know, skills, charisma, personality. You have your own, you know, some of your other, you know, even employees. I think you've done a good job at like building them as characters in the story. Like they are all kind of, you know, adding interesting tidbits to the brand, which then if you're coming in, like you said, if you buy say an energy beverage at Buc-ee's and you're like, oh, this brand looks kind of cool. You go onto their social media
and you watch them. Yeah.
You go on, like all of a sudden you start to get like caught up into the storylines of what's going on. And you guys have done a really good job, I think, of like following and just understanding that people want to be entertained. They want to enjoy this whole process. Like it's not
like
just
a show.
Yeah, it's just it's a good show. I mean, it's, you know what I mean? Like that's what you're doing. You're producing your own, you know, show, your own movies, your own whatever.
And a lot of these founders, and it doesn't have to be the founder, but it could be anybody. Like they're scared to get on camera and just talk. And like I don't get, because I don't know. Like I sucked on camera at first. I'm sure you did too. Like, but who cares? Are the other people doing it? I don't see them doing it. Whoever's judging you. So like I just started and kept going and going, and now I have almost 500,000 followers, and all I post is RYSE. So those, we call them super fans here internally. So those 500,000 people are super fans of RYSE. They're consuming RYSE. They're buying RYSE. They're taking. I'd rather have 500,000 super fans than 5 million where 10,000 are super fans. So like, just get out there. Like people are going to follow you. Like just do it is my biggest advice. Like people are just scared to, though. I don't know why.
Yeah, I think this is definitely generationally, you know, a big difference. I mean, I think, you know, business, when I was going through business school or when I first started out, like it was, you didn't do that. And I think social media obviously changed the whole game, because you have the ability actually to do that. Before, I'm thinking back to a book I read recently, like Lee Iacocca was the, he built the Mustang and a bunch of things at Ford, but he also turned around Chrysler and everything. But like back in the, I think it was the 70s or 80s, like he started to sign his name on like print ads. And then eventually he was a part of the TV ads. And it was like the most craziest thing ever, where people were like, this guy is on TV ads, like the CEO, that is so insane. Like they thought like this guy wants to be a celebrity or this guy wants to be wherever.
Yeah.
And then still you had all these years, probably 30 years before it became like normalized because of social media, because you had the ability to just be able to broadcast very easily. You had to be able to do that.
Yeah, but who tells a better picture than the person living it?
Yeah. I mean, you're able to like, opinion. there's an element of humanizing the brand too by you actually being out in front. And to your
Yep.
point, you have to. There are people that are out front of the brands that are probably not doing the brand justice or doing well because they are actually, probably should not be the people in there.
There are some, yeah. Yeah, no, there
but
are.
but I think there's, like, to your point,
But
there
find
are.
somebody to be that person.
Yeah, I think there's an element of, like, can you create a cast of characters that you don't have to be the quote unquote leading person all the time. You can you there's so many different ways to do this, but I think it's hard to say that you shouldn't have somebody out in front because you need to. I think personal connections with customers, I think they want to see the people behind that are driving the companies. They want to see those things. I think that's, like, to your point, the super fans that are for, going back to you being a marketer, like, the ability to create advocacy and people that will do the marketing for you ends up blending all your costs down, allows you to maybe do other things with some of that marketing spend because you have people out there that are, like, doing that stuff for you.
You need to be able to combat things too. Like, every brand has bad press. So you need to be able to get on there and be like, here's what really happened. And 99% of the time, it's not, like, real or true. Like, to tell your side of the story and what's going on and maybe this happened and be honest about it. Like, I think that's a big reason too to grow your social following because you can get it out there so easily. Because unfortunately, right now, everyone loves drama. It's horrible. Like, I hate it, but
It's unfortunate that I think the society, for whatever reason, has really been drawn to negativity.
Yeah, I don't
Or
get
maybe
it,
it's algorithms, maybe it's whatever it is. Like, for people, the attention has been driven towards these elements that unfortunately don't paint the best picture. And then, as to your point, the ownership or people within the company, like, they always have to, I don't want to say defend themselves, but, like, put out the truth and, like, make sure that there's a central voice that people can go and reconcile. Because, yeah, they might believe what they believe, but, like, if you don't have tell your story, there's no reconciliation between the two. It's just that people are seeing so and so talk about this or whatever drama that ends up creating this, like, buzz. And a lot of the, like,
yeah.
if it's influencers or just fans or communities or whatever it is, like, it seems like everybody is like, you're on my side or not on my side, which
The more successful you get, the more people hate you. It's a fact.
what's that, more money, more problems? Is that what the great philosopher?
Unfortunately, it's a fact. So just how it goes, right? It's good to be noticed, though. Like, it's a good thing.
Let's talk TikTok a little bit, because I think,
oh boy,
here's my take on it. Obviously, and you mentioned this a little bit at the beginning of the conversation, like, you are somebody that has been seeing internet, kind of how to connect content, commerce, like, all that stuff for a very long time. Like, this isn't something new, like, where you saw, SEO, Google's type stuff. You saw social media, you saw whatever. And then all of a sudden now you're seeing TikTok, and you guys jumped in, like, head first. Arguably, like, one of the brands in our space that I think has done the best job at diving into it and realizing the power of TikTok.
We were the biggest number one health brand. At one point, we were top 5 in all of TikTok sales shop. So we have owned that market. But just from a TikTok perspective, years ago when COVID happened, we jumped on there. We saw the trend. And even though it's a younger audience, we saw a way to get reach. So, like, the number one thing I look at as a brand is eyeballs. Like, how do you get more eyeballs? How do you get people to view your product? And at the time, every platform was switching over to video content. So I feel like a lot of these CEOs, CMOs, they don't look at the important picture of things, right? I didn't get on TikTok to sell more. I got on TikTok to learn how to make good short form content that then does good on YouTube and Instagram. And the reason for that is you were being pushed more on TikTok, and it was easier to find out what was working. And through that, I found, like, how to build, like, my Instagram's grown. We probably have one of the biggest YouTubes just from YouTube Shorts. We grew like 70,000 subscribers in the matter of a year. Like for me, it's finding tools and finding out how to put out the best content you can and learn the quickest. Because in this industry, if you don't learn quick, you're falling behind. So, I mean, TikTok Shop specifically, we already kind of owned the fitness space on TikTok. So when we got in, we just absolutely blew up. It was crazy. We did like $11 million in a week on TikTok Shop alone. So
it's insane. I've seen a few times, some of their internal rankings and things like that, and having you guys be up there. I was just like, I could see why. And to your point, like learning for years how to like hone in storytelling through the way in which people want to now digest information, like how they expect it, how they wherever, like it's really a matter of understanding, going back to like, brands and stories and like how that's just kind of at the end of the day, you have to understand, I guess, the consumer journey or the shopping journey or whatever that is, like starts with a lot of just like hits across brand touch points, across like they're hearing different stories, they're hearing wherever it is. But I'm thinking back to like a story with Greg LaVecchia from Bloom. He spoke a lot about understanding kind of that, where is our customer, like where are they intersecting throughout their days, like really mapping out like a day-to-day of our core customer and making sure that we are within those touch points across the board and not thinking about it from, to your point, selling. It's just, we want to get very authentic brand touch points that if eventually when somebody goes from discovery to consideration down to the purchase, funnel, like they are going to think about us. They're probably going to select us and give us a shot. And if we believe we have a great product, we know not only are we going to get that one sale, we're probably going to get multiple sales because we know there's some retention piece to that. But it's a matter
that's important too. Make sure you have a good product. A lot of people just put product out there and I'm like, ugh. Like you got to make sure it's good, or you can get a sale, but are they going to come back? Because we look at LTV, right? Like we're not just looking at a one-time conversion. Typically, people stay with us for 4, 5, 6 purchases in a month repeatedly. So, like if you can have a good product, you can count that into your marketing as well.
Yeah, so it's super important, I guess, to just think about, get away from this, I guess, period of time where, and arguably this is probably, you said 2020, 2021, like the iOS kind of like the shift of everything and just each also culturally the shift of like how people were, finding information, consuming information, whatever. There was this like, I guess, combination or congruence of all this stuff together that like ended up creating what now people have to move away from this like mathematical performance, like modeling of like, how am I going to arbitrage things into, wait a minute, we have to go back
that
to
never worked either.
completeness.
People thought like these crazy funnels with like, all right, we're gonna do this outreach campaign with this 7-day funnel, 14-day funnel, 30-day. That never works. Like you just need to show people good content. Like these gurus of Facebook ads too, like you're not doing anything different. You're putting an ad out there and you're getting views and you're paying for it. Sure, there might be some little tweaks you can do on audience matching and whatever, but they're not doing anything to get you more sales. It's what content you're putting out there. And until you understand that, you're never going to be successful. If people don't want to watch it, they're not buying your product.
I agree. I mean, I think it all starts with, we all are consuming media constantly, and it's like, which ones do we hold up to the highest standards and keep our attention will ultimately create the most commercial benefit. But like, you have to get people to be locked in. You got to create attention. You got to get, that interesting tidbits. Before I let you go, and again, I'm not necessarily looking for you to, disclose anything that's not public or anything, but and just kind of maybe even just take this up 40,000 feet or whatever. But like, what's next? I mean, I know you mentioned before, you're not done building anytime soon. You're a super competitive person. Like, where are you going? Is there a path in which you see? Is there some categories or interesting things that you're dabbling with? Like, what's next?
So we're going to focus on what we're good at. We're focusing on energy. We just launched into Kroger nationwide last week. We have a lot of C stores that we're launching into this year that you're going to see. My main focus is not spread myself too thin. We're going to focus on what we're good at. Yeah, we might come out with some, like we came out with hydration on the supplement side. We'll keep growing that a little bit. But you pre-workout, protein, energy drinks, we're the best at it, and we're going to keep focusing on that. Bigger sponsorships. We're going to have bigger collabs coming, some of the best collabs in protein we've ever done this year. We're just going to keep honing in and winning there.
Nic, I appreciate taking the time out of your day and sharing all this information with my audience. Definitely appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
I hope you enjoyed this YouTube video. If you did, consider hitting the like button to support me. Also, help me get to my new short-term goal of 4,000 subscribers by hitting that subscribe button. I'd love to see you join me on this journey, but we need to fix the fact that I think more than 90% of you at this point watching this YouTube video are not subscribed to my channel, and that makes me extremely sad. But I do want to thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next one.